Yeah, so like I said, or Nick said, I attended the National Development Conference. It was really helpful just to get different perspectives from different councils, and kind of get some of their experience. So my focus in what I do day to day is generally grants for the shelter and supportive housing. So I know that's a little bit different than conferences, but I'm hoping that like this can be more interactive. So anytime you guys have, feedback or questions or anything from experiences that you've had or anything, please feel free to shout out at any time. So um starting out, this is my favorite. Don't let grants stress you out. They can feel very stressful and overwhelming. But I got this sticker actually. I went to the nonprofit storytelling conference a couple years ago. I've attended twice, and Diane Leonard was there. She was actually ended up being the keynote speaker at the development conference. And she was very helpful. This is like she passes these stickers out, which is great. But she has a lot of free resources on her website, and I've learned a lot from her over the years. So um, yeah, feel free to check out her website. She's got lots of free stuff. But yeah, biggest thing is don't let grants stress you out. And then beyond that, grants should not be, the only part of your fundraising strategy. You obviously need to have different sources of revenue. Grants are not fast money. There's a lot of times when we'll apply for grants and it can take 2 to 3 months to even hear if you're awarded, and then it can take longer to receive that funding. I applied for a grant back in March for the shelter, and we're not going to hear about it until November. So it's just, grants are great, but it's important to keep those timelines in mind when you're considering applying for those. And then grants also come with strings attached. So they're not as flexible as just regular, private donations. There's a lot more just kind of restrictions on how you use it based on how you write your proposals and the budgets that you submit and things like that. So they can be really beneficial for capacity building or for particular projects, but just don't ever solely rely on them for your funding. So a few things about kind of how grants have changed over the last couple of years, especially. Last year, as you all know, there were quite a few cuts to federal funding and programs and things like that. So that has kind of created this atmosphere where there's a lot more competition. It's fewer resources, but there's also more need for services. So a lot of nonprofit organizations are looking for these private foundation grants to oh, it's like who's talking? It's me.
He just needs to mute themselves.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're getting feedback from one person. So if you guys wouldn't mind, yeah. I guess it was JC. All right.
Okay. All good. Thank you. Yes, so there's been just a lot more competition. And then also with AI, there's a lot more, applicants coming out who maybe wouldn't have applied previously because they have those extra, they have that assistance to be able to apply for grants that they wouldn't normally do so. So a really interesting fact from one of the webinars that we attend, we attend a lot of free will webinars. It's a lot for development and fundraising. They said that private foundations would need to increase their grant making by 282% to replace the loss of federal funding in 2026. So there's a lot of competition, a lot of people looking for those funds, which does make it a little tricky, here because we're all, trying to raise money for the same things more or less. So it's like we want to try to avoid competing with each other as well. So how can we work better together to do that? So along those lines, there's also been a little bit more funder fatigue. So I've heard from a couple of foundations that they are getting just kind of getting a little tired of funding the same things over and over, which is really hard for an organization like us because we're always, kind of going for those same basic needs of food, shelter, clothing. But they're just looking for more creative solutions to common problems. So I think that's something that we can kind of tap into, especially with our service model, right? We do a lot more person-to-person assistance, which other organizations don't have. So we have that going for us, and that's a great thing. So beyond that, one of my favorite quotes is, if you've met one foundation, you've met one foundation. They are all very, very different as far as grant cycles and applications go, and also as well as just their funding priorities, the way that they make their decisions, and just kind of the impact that they're looking to make in the community. One of my favorites also from Diane Leonard is, don't throw spaghetti at the wall. Don't just apply for anything that comes along and hope that it sticks. And I'm hoping that some of the content that I have in this presentation will also kind of help you figure out what's the best fit as far as grant opportunities go. So you're not just applying for anything, but you're really being strategic and looking for ways to really have that kind of collaborative relationship with a foundation. So part of that involves doing a lot of research before you decide to apply. And then big one is just not falling into the trap of mission creep. So trying to create a program that kind of fits what you're doing, but just to get the money, and then you're doing more work and it's not really as helpful as it probably could have been. And then lastly, just a huge one is to always tailor your proposal to the foundation. They're all different. They're all looking for different criteria, different, we'll get into more of like the specifics of how you can do that. But it's just really important to speak to the actual foundation rather than just kind of copying and pasting to sending out mass proposals to people. So find your fit. Grants are not one size fits all. As far as finding grant opportunities, I've been very fortunate in that when I started, we had a pretty good foundation of relationships with a lot of foundations. So, I've been just kind of maintaining and strengthening those over the years. But as far as finding new ones, absolutely the best way to find new grants is word of mouth. So, finding things on social media, a lot of times, agencies will say, hey, we got this grant from, yes, or whoever. And that's a good way to learn about those opportunities. And then you can do a little bit more of your own research into those foundations to see if those opportunities are a good fit for you. So there are some resources at the Dayton Metro Library that you may have heard about. So they offer Candid as a free resource that you can use at their locations. You can also schedule a session with someone from the library to help you kind of walk through that tool and how to use it. And they can help you use that to find the foundations, to find the grants. I would say that in our experience, Matthew's been helping me a little bit more with this lately. It can be kind of helpful, but you really are going to get more just from word of mouth or even just kind of doing your own internet research, just to kind of see what's out there. And then
Jackie, do you have to go to the library to use this?
yes.
Okay,
So you
can't do it on
can
your computer.
pay for it. I'm not sure if individuals can pay for it, but I know we considered paying for it internally here, and it just didn't quite seem worth it, especially since you can get it for free at the library.
Yeah, just get it on your
right. Yeah.
your computer.
Right. So
And it's called Candid Resource. Is that the name of it?
Candid. Yeah, just Candid. And yeah, so it can be really helpful just to kind of find those foundations. But beyond that, then there's a lot more research that you'll want to do. Specifically, going through their a foundation's 990s is going to be one of the best ways to find information about them. So that'll tell you who they funded in the past, kind of the average grant size of the awards that they give, and then even lists of their board members. So a lot of times that can be a good way to be like, oh, hey, I know who that person is. And you can kind of make connections that way to kind of get your foot in the door. You can reach out to them and say, hey, like I'm thinking about, I saw that your foundation offers grants. Is that something that we might be a good fit for? So that's a really good way to make those connections. Matthew's been really good at helping me with that. So thank you, Matthew.
How do you find 990s?
Google.
Okay.
Or Matthew, do you have like a secret way? I know that Candid does have them, but a lot of the websites a lot of foundation websites will have their 990s listed. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, researching, Googling just that foundation Form 990, it generally will populate it. There's several free sites that upload the Form 990. I think a lot of times it takes till July or August to get the last calendar year 990 published. So some of what you'll find dates back to 23, 24, 22 in some cases. But even with not, I have had more success with 990, but to Jackie's point, it's mainly the relationships. I knew of a grant or a foundation just from my past relationships, and we ultimately at the shelter were able to apply for it because of that relationship. I think too, another opportunity we have right now, and it was from a donor who came in for a tour and said, oh, I'm on the decision-making committee for this particular foundation. You should really consider applying. It's all about relationships when it comes to connecting with the foundation and finding foundations that are out there.
Okay, who was that guy again? I'm kidding. It was a joke. Sorry.
Oh yeah.
That's what I was learning. It's like
Is that me? Yeah.
it was a donor, but yeah.
Yeah, it was.
John knows my sense of humor. He rolled his eyes appropriately, so thank you, John.
But if we share who we get our donations from,
Right.
we're all applying to the same place.
Yeah.
It seems like you cut your throat.
Yeah.
So did you really share who you get your donations from?
That's where we're kind of in a tricky spot here, because we don't want to be competing against one another, but we do want everyone to have an impact. Yeah. So that's one of the things I would always recommend is reaching out to Nick before you do apply for something. That way he can kind of keep track of who's applying for what. And we know, if somebody else says, hey, I was going to apply for this. He says, well, I already know of another conference who's, applying. Yeah, that's kind of the best way that we've figured to
Try to eliminate the competition between our different conferences.
Yeah. So something too is that, there's one grant through the Dayton Foundation that multiple conferences have applied for, and they're okay with that, but each conference will have to wait, I think it's 2 years or something before they can reapply. So 1 year, one conference is applied, and then another year, a different conference applied. So just kind of maintaining that balance.
Yeah, that's true. Also, the Friends of the Poor have a similar two-year. I'm coming up on both of those in November, so I'll be applying for Dayton Foundation Basic Needs Grant and for the Friends of the Poor.
I'll write that down.
Yep.
We're gonna start a Google Doc to keep track of these.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean that's a really good. I think that's going to be the best way to do this is to maybe just have everybody, let Nick know if you're going to apply for something, and then let him know when the final report's going to be due. And that can help us kind of decide if another conference will be eligible, in the near future. So. But some other key points to consider when you are doing your research, main ways to find if something's a good fit is mission alignment. Do they accept unsolicited proposals? Sometimes you'll have to make contact first, and then maybe they'll invite you to apply, or maybe they'll want to talk with you a little bit more before they do invite you to apply. Do they fund in your general geographic area? Do you have a population that you're serving that they are also interested in serving? And then also just who are their previous grantees and typical award range. So that can kind of help you gauge whether or not it's worth pursuing. So, to apply or not to apply is the very important question, with some Shakespeare there for you. I won't read it with my English accent. I'll spare you. But like I said, it is very important to, do your research. So you'll want to go through their guidelines, make sure that you're eligible. Do you align with their funding priorities? Is the timeline feasible? Like I said before, grants are not fast money. So if they're not awarding grants until August, but you have a really great need in March, is that, going to be worth your time still? Probably, but, it's worth considering. Like we said, review their 990s. Another important thing is to go through all the guidelines and the requirements for the reporting. Are you prepared to answer all of those questions and provide? A lot of them will ask for clear deliverables and measurable outcomes. So are you going to be prepared to be able to record that information and have it ready to report back to them? So it's just a really important consideration. And then, as Matthew kind of alluded to earlier, reach out to the foundation when possible. So always make those connections when you can with a real person. That's really going to help you get your foot in the door, start those conversations. And then even if they say, hey, I don't know that you're really a great fit for us, but I do know another foundation that maybe, have you looked into them? And it will never hurt to reach out and find out. And then, like I said, reach out to Nick before applying so we can kind of keep track of all of that, which I think will be really helpful for everybody. And then it's okay to say no to an opportunity. There have been a couple grant opportunities that we've looked at that it's like, like we're kind of borderline. We don't really have the capacity to do this grant at this time. It's probably not worth our effort. And it's okay to say no. So things like, if the timing's off, that maybe they aren't going to serve in your or they're not going to fund your geographic region, or if there's just misalignment in their funding priorities. We'll see grants for affordable housing, but we don't really do affordable housing specifically. We're kind of affordable housing adjacent. So sometimes, those just don't quite align. Yeah. So I have a good rubric that I will share with you. So this is a really helpful one. I got it from, again, the free will webinar that I attended, and it can kind of help you decide, like, is it a strong fit? Then absolutely apply for it. Is it medium fit? If we have the time, the resources, yeah, we can go ahead and try and see if, maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. And then a weak fit, it's probably okay to walk away from that opportunity.
FYI, I put this whole PowerPoint in the chat, and in theory, you should be able to just click on it and download it onto your computer. Yeah, if anybody has any problems with that, let me know. I also sent a document that Jackie got from the development conference she went to, that lists a whole bunch of donor things that participants, I think, conference members talk about, things that they do in order to maintain good relationships with their donors, not necessarily grants or foundations, but regular donors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a really good list to just kind of, have we tried this? Have we tried that? To just kind of get your name out there. Because again, the more people know who you are and what you're doing, the easier it'll be to make those connections with people who, have money that they would love to give. So John says he does not see how to download.
Yeah, I don't know. I've never done this before. What happens if you click on it? Does that do anything?
So yeah, no, this
It's
is fun.
okay. It's okay,
not-
Nick, we can
Okay.
proceed.
I'll figure it out later.
We'll figure it out.
Okay,
Yeah.
We will get the
John, I
slides to
couldn't do
you.
it either.
Okay.
okay.
We will get the slides to you. And I know this one's kind of hard to see, but might be easier on your computer. But anyway, when you see the slides, you can zoom in. But this was a resource I got from Petrus Academy. And it's just kind of a sample outreach email and phone call script. If you're just, kind of cold calling a foundation, it's just kind of a good template to, like, here's what you can ask to just kind of make that first connection. So tips for writing a winning grant proposal. The first one is to make sure that you have all of your required and supporting documents in order first. This is a big one for me just because a lot of times I'll have to reach out to Christine and, get a budget or something. And I try to give her enough time to make sure she can get it to me well before the deadline. But it's important to just have all those in place or be collecting those before you start writing.
Yeah, I have a question on that,
Yeah.
if you wouldn't mind. You said you need to have a budget, and this is Sarah with St. Patrick up in Troy, and I have had to put together a budget document, something to upload, but do you have any recommendations on how we do that? Because like what would a budget look like? We don't have a budget. The money comes in, the money goes out. Like, how do we even put together a budget for applications? Because they've all asked for them.
Right. So that's a great question. And I could probably come up with a template to send you. But the biggest things that you want to show on there is your revenue and your expenses for the project. So if you're, doing a food pantry and you're requesting $1,000 from an organization for your food pantry, you could put as your revenue that you're getting $1,000 in, and then expenses that you're planning to spend, $2,000 over the course of the year or whatever. And then the $1,000 from this grant will cover part of that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess so.
Let me
Okay.
I
suggest
guess based
something.
on past expenditures.
Yeah, that's probably going to be the easiest way to do it. Yeah. So, I mean, it's hard. I'm very thankful for Christine because she does such a good job with all of our complex budgets.
Let me suggest something. We
Yeah.
all have to put in quarterly reports. If you take those four, the income and the outgo from the quarterly reports that you have to do anyway, and put them together, and then put in those into the same budget format as the four of them together would be, and then add 10% for inflation and turn that in.
That would make sense to me.
I've
Okay.
used it several times. It works.
I think they're really just looking to see where you're going to spend the money, and to what Sarah's saying, that hard to say what the scope of the period of spending will be, but you could give an example and say, if I'm asking for $2,000, this is a notional way that we would spend it. These are our expenses, so they can see that it's all going to the neighbors, you see, and explain the situation that it's pretty dynamic, but you could bound it in terms of what the categories are and that sort of thing. So just a thought.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, those are helpful. Thank you. So when you get into the actual writing of the application, some important things to keep in mind are just being clear and concise. Definitely want to avoid, jargon or vague language. Keep it just very simple. You want to follow the guidelines for the format, font type, spacing, character word count. A lot of grants now will use online portals, so it's pretty easy to stay inside those parameters. But if you are ever doing a print one, I've had some that are very particular about, things like font type and spacing. So just make sure that you're reading all of the guidelines very thoroughly, and then answering every question very completely, even if part of it doesn't apply to you, just explain why it doesn't apply. And then somewhere in the application, oh my goodness, sorry. Somewhere in the application, you'll want to clearly state how much you're requesting. And like John said, they just want to see how you're going to be using those funds very clearly, and always relate it back to the impact that it's going to, not just, oh, we're going to use this to buy groceries. Like, we're going to use this to feed a family, just keeping it focused on that impact. And then tailoring the proposal to the foundation is extremely important. You always want to mirror the language that they're using in their communications, either in their grant guidelines or on their website. If they say, I had an example in here. If they say something like, people experiencing economic hardship, you can say that, like, that's how you would phrase it. Whereas if it's a faith-based organization, you could say, we're attending to our brothers and sisters in need. And you can kind of just tweak your language that way. If it's not faith-based, you can be a little bit more, we're helping people who are experiencing economic hardship to create a more equitable community, because that's still what we're doing, but it just kind of makes it easier for them to understand. Whereas we're in this to grow spiritually doesn't always translate well for everybody. So if that makes sense. It's been something that I do a lot with, the public grants. So I have to use we follow these evidence-based practices, and, all the really technical jargon is what they want to see. Whereas a lot of the private foundations don't know what that is. So, and then just little things like inviting the funder in. So, kind of usually either at the beginning or the end of kind of when you're describing your program, I like to say something like, St. Vincent de Paul invites you to strengthen the Dayton community with your generous funding to prevent neighbors from losing their homes. So just something like that to kind of invite them into that, to put them in your story. And like I said, tell a story. So incorporating those impactful details, or even sharing about a neighbor that your conference has helped, can really kind of boost your application. It doesn't have to be like a big long story. You can just say something as simple as like, her face lit up or her eyes glistened with tears when we told them that they could keep their lights on. Just little details like that can really kind of make it be more noticeable, and can really appeal to the reader. So just some more tips. An important part is distinguishing what makes us unique. So with St. Vincent de Paul, obviously it's our person-to-person service model that will be the most, that's what makes us different from other organizations, aside from our spirituality. It's just that we're really in it to accompany people. So something that's really impacted me is reading some of your stories about how you will walk with a neighbor, and then you don't even end up providing any financial assistance or material assistance, but you're just walking with them, and then you connect them, or you help them solve the problem on their own, or you help them connect with another organization who can assist them better. So I think even that aspect is really powerful. And that's also something that foundations love to see, is our collaboration with other organizations. So, they don't like to see duplication of services. They like to know that their funding is going to a unique organization that will do something very specific with it. So if you regularly work with AES or Centerpoint, or you do any sort of work with landlords or other churches, those can be really good examples of showing them that you're collaborating with other people to, have these creative solutions to problems. And then some other things to consider are just considering misconceptions about St. Vincent. So a lot of people think that our work is financially supported by the Catholic Church, or people may think that you receive more funding support from like the shelter than you do, like just kind of making sure that they're aware of the dynamics at play here. And then this was a great quote from someone at the conference that I had to put in here, but we have to toot our own horn, but we're not tooting our horn for our greatness, but for God's greatness. So I know it can be hard to like talk about the great things we're doing, but just knowing that by doing that, you will be giving glory to God and you'll be taking better care of your neighbors. And then another thing that can just help applications a lot is explaining any training that might be involved with your Vincentians. So call taker training, home visits, bridges out of poverty. If you ever do mental health first aid, those can really appeal to funders because it lets them know that you're taking it seriously to take the best care of your neighbors that you can. And then here are just a few more resources that you can reference about, common grant writing mistakes and just kind of a final grant submission checklist, which can be really helpful. We'll always say, always have somebody else read your application. Thank you, Matthew. So just not even necessarily for proofreading. I'm a big stickler about commas and things, but the biggest thing is to make sure that it makes sense. When I'm writing a grant, I know exactly what I'm trying to say, but I don't know if I'm saying it. So it's just really helpful to have somebody else take a look at it and point out any places where you could be more clear or provide, more data or support or even that emotional detail to really make it more appealing for the funder. And then these are just some more style guides. Different word choices that you can use. Like I said, you definitely want to be more clear with your writing and just make it so that they don't have to think too hard. Like they're reading a lot of applications. It needs to be very simple and clear for them. And then thank you for saying thank you is actually a song that I sang with my 3rd grade choir. And so it always gets stuck in my head. But saying thank you is like one of the most important things to do when you receive a grant. So as soon as you receive an award, always call them to thank them. If they send you an email to let you know, you can respond to the email with gratitude and then give them a call later. And also follow up with a handwritten thank you. So that can really, take it up a notch. Just to let them know that you are grateful. I don't think you can say thank you too much. So people love to hear it. So along those lines, you'll definitely want to, even if they say no, first of all, don't take it personally. And second of all, still thank them. Thank them for their consideration, for taking the time, for, allowing you to share more about your organization. And then you can always even ask if there's anything that you could do to strengthen your application in the future. So it could be that you're just not a good fit for them. But maybe they'll say, well, if you could tell us a little bit more about this, that might, help strengthen your application. Maybe we'd be more inclined to fund you next time. That can be really helpful. I don't always get responses when I ask that question, but it never hurts to ask. So, and then of course, when you're reporting for a grant, you always want to make sure that you are reporting according to their stated guidelines. A lot of them will have very specific things they ask for. Some of them have nothing specific. They just say, tell us how it went. And those are great. But just make sure that you are following those guidelines and that you're meeting those deadlines. So if you submit a grant report late, doesn't look good for you, doesn't look good for anybody else. So just be very careful about making sure you're turning those in on time. And then I love, especially with reporting, to tell a story, to share an actual story. And again, doesn't have to be long. It can just be a few sentences, but just let them know, you know, a person whose life was changed by your work and by their funding. And so then another important thing with that reporting is that if something changes or you experience challenges during the grant period, you always want to make sure that you are communicating with the funder as soon as possible. You want to share what happened and any lessons that you learned through that process. And that's just something that can, you know, strengthen their trust in you and say, oh, you know, no, it didn't go perfectly. They understand that things happen. And they're willing to work with you. They just need to know about it. And then just a few more, or one more resource for reporting and relationship management. This is just something you can reference later on. But it really kind of focuses on that relationship element where, you know, funders don't fund organizations, they fund people. So if they know you and they know that you're committed to your work, they're going to be more inclined to fund your project and your work. So this is just kind of some helpful information to help you manage those relationships. And then I think that's it. But I would love to hear any of your questions or feedback or things that struck you or things that have worked for you in the past with your experience.
Jackie, I have a couple questions. This is John.
Yeah. Hello, John.
Hello. I wonder, are there any boundaries, like with the Dayton Foundation and some of the larger organizations that are grant heavy, or any particular grant that's that people are seeking? Are there boundaries internally or externally for our conferences? If you don't know what I mean, ask and I'll explain further. But that it seems like there might be certain grants that may or may not be advisable for us to go after, because there's like a turf thing here, you know, a little bit. What do you have to say about that?
Are you talking like geographic boundaries or just
anything
just
organizational?
any kind of barrier?
Yes.
So I talked with my contact at the Dayton Foundation because we applied recently for the Basic Human Needs Grant for the shelter. And that's the first time I can remember us doing that. But she had said, because I know that there were at least a couple conferences that were interested in applying for that. And her advice was, you know, as long as they're serving a different area, like a different zip code area, they wouldn't have a problem with at least one conference applying at the same time that the shelter did. And then that conference would have to wait another 2 years to apply again, assuming they've, you know, fulfilled their final report requirements. But like I said, that's one grant that, you know, one conference will apply 1 year and then another conference applies the following year, and it's kind of a rotation. But they also offer those grants on a quarterly cycle. So it's always worth reaching out to kind of ask the question. But that's why I think it'll be really helpful to have Nick kind of, I say gatekeeping, but like, you know, keeping track of those. Yeah. Just to make sure that we're not stepping on toes and they don't suddenly have 3 grants from 3 different conferences, the same grant cycle.
Okay. Down those lines, after we get off this call, Nick will make these charts available, but the dissemination will be, you know, as good as we can get to each conference to get the messages across. I'm wondering if there's a way to formalize the I hate to say requirement, but the coordination with Nick. Um, I'm wondering, is there any, I'm just thinking out loud, but anything we could do with regard to the quarterly report or anything that would, because he's going to get these calls, he's going to have his spreadsheet or whatever. There may be conferences that may or may not be able to coordinate as well as they want to, et cetera, or may not have even gotten the word. Is there a way we can formalize this? Not today or now, but is that something we could think about a little bit? Because I just would like I'd like this to be a little more formal, because I like the fact he's got his hands in everything, but this will be just another collateral task for him, I'm sure. But he's the right guy to keep an eye on this. But I want conferences to know that this is the first step. We're going to apply heading check with Nick.
So, Sandy, I think you were the person who most recently applied for the basic human needs grant. Is that right? Or am I getting you all mixed up?
Sarah.
Sandy, are you still here?
Okay.
No. Oh, I mean, well, anyway, whoever it was, I did list it. I did put it in conference notes about a month or so ago, and said, if you are going to apply for this one, please let me know. And now, so JC, you're going to apply again on their next quarter.
Yeah, after October 1st.
Okay, all right. Mary, I think Mary Cox has applied for this before. Yes, Mary, are you still there? But anyway, so at any rate, yeah, I will put this out and let folks know when a conference has dibs.
Okay, Nick. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something we've been talking about, I think. Yeah.
Sure.
Should conferences self-anoint who gets dibs? Or should some kind of priority criteria be put into place?
We've talked about this, and we're like, we don't want to get in the business of judging whose application is going to be better or whatever. I think the only way we could do this is sort of a first come, first serve. Let me know that you're applying, and I'll let everybody else know not to apply this quarter. Unless you have a better idea, Dan.
I don't know that it hurts to have multiple applications for the basic human needs grant, because each of us serves a different geographical area. So you should provide information on, how many people are here, what percentage of them live below the poverty line, how much have we supported this group of people in the past. So you get your summary of services chart off of Serveware and use those numbers to show that, yeah, I'm serving Fairborn in the following fashion. And if we have somebody else that says I'm serving downtown Dayton in this following fashion, the two of them shouldn't compete with each other. I don't think they're going to treat them as competing. I think what they'll do is pick out the ones that go the best. That's just what I think. I haven't gotten any indication that there's, we'll only do 3 basic human needs development things. The one thing that is an issue is that we all have to apply under the council's EIN.
Correct.
So we have the problem of the check comes into council and then you have to figure out who it goes to and that kind of stuff. But
yeah, we have had that problem.
Yeah.
But one of the questions for us, as Jackie and I were talking about that, is, they only want one application per EIN. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if we're in this, all the conferences are using the same EIN. By the way, the shelter has its own EIN. Those are different, but all the conferences have the same EIN, which certainly complicates it, which is, I think, why it makes more sense for us to have just one application per application cycle.
Could you explain to us what an EIN is?
Go for it, Jackie.
It is the tax ID
Okay.
number. Yeah, I can't remember exactly what EIN stands for, but
Thank you. 'Cause I couldn't
something
remember.
identification number.
We all fall under you guys?
So under the
Yeah.
DDC, yeah,
But the shelter is separate from the
But the
DDC.
shelter is a separate
Okay.
entity, so. Yeah. I feel like there was something, another thought I had about that. And you can shoot this down, but especially for, families of parishes, there's possibility that you could maybe do a joint application. You just have to be very clear ahead of time, what percentage of award funds would go to which conference. But that is an opportunity. It's another good way to show that you're collaborating. So, I mean, that's an option. It could potentially strengthen your application. I'm not sure, but something to think about.
What's your average award?
It varies greatly. So, we've gotten up to 100,000 from one foundation and as little as 2,500 or 1,000. So it just really depends. But yeah, we've got at least a handful of family foundations that we've been working with for a number of years who give at least around the 50,000 mark. Some are a little more, some are a little less. And then we've got some smaller ones. Those are more usually geared towards projects. So I typically try to get shelter operation funding because that's budget relieving. And I focus on how that supports our salary expenses, which are the highest part of the budget. And just focus on that, we have to have people here 24/7 to be able to care for our guests. And then I'll try for projects like the Basic Human Needs Grant. I requested funds for bus passes for the guests and for just some basic clothing and personal hygiene items so that we can get those. And that's still relieving our budget for the shelter.
So our friends out there in Zoom land,
Mhm.
what are they chasing?
That's a
What
great
kind of
question.
results are they chasing?
That's a great question, Zoomland friends.
Anybody?
What are you asking? What grants are we going to go after?
No, what kind of numbers are you chasing? Are you chasing
Oh,
$5,000, $10,000, $2,000?
okay. I have gone, I've been doing grants since 2000. And we started off with $1,000 is what we asked for. And then a couple years later, we asked for $2,000. And then I was using Chuck Berry Foundation. And so I got in touch with their person that manages this, Nora Vondrell, and invited her to come out and see our pantry and see how we do our business and stuff. She did that. And then we put in a request for a $5,000 grant. And she came back and she says, the work that you guys do, you need $10,000. So she gave us $10,000. And that's what we're going for now. For this coming year will be $10,000. But I haven't gone for anything bigger than that.
And is that for something specific? Just
Yeah,
pantry
it's a
or?
basic needs. Well, the smaller ones that we started off with, we made it at the first time around for furniture,
Okay.
which we don't do anymore. And then the next one we did for power. For power payments. And we did that. And now we just go with basic human needs, and it can be power, gas, water, whatever.
That's great.
In general, Jackie, does it make our foundations by and large going to want a more specific project or program or particular, like paying for utilities, or are they like okay for sure, I'll give you $10,000 to continue to do what you've been doing.
So generally, I've noticed the shift more towards specifics. They want to see something specific and tangible. And I would definitely recommend that if you're just starting out, like JC said, that, they started out with, specific to certain things, to furniture or to pantry or to utilities. And then as you grow those relationships, you can invite them in to see all of the work you're doing, and how having that flexible funding can be really beneficial because you never know what your neighbors are going to need in the moment. So I think that's what I would say.
We've been very successful on asking the church to add an envelope each month. And that's been very successful. I don't know if everyone else is doing that. Everybody in Zoomland has American Legions and VFWs. They're very generous with their money because they have to give away 50% of their gambling money to charities. So we go in once
And I'll
a
add
year.
the Eagles as well to that list.
Yeah, we go in once a year and ask for $2,500 or $3,000 in November, so we can help families with Christmas presents during the year. That's an idea if you're at your local VFW or your local American Legion. Normally they'll say yes with just write you a check.
Yeah.
You just got to send them a letter.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah, things like that are great too. And especially during the holidays, kind of getting your foot in the door with somebody. And then maybe, after the holidays, you can say, hey, we'd love to show you, the impact that you made during the holidays. And also here's the things that we do throughout the year, so those can be really great. Do what? Oh, unshare.
I have a logistical question. When a conference gets X dollars for grant money, does it show up on the quarterly report or does it show up on the annual report? How does that get reported to the council?
I think so.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it shows up on the quarterly report. I don't know that gets translated specifically on, onto the annual report.
I mean, I don't look at the quarterly reports, but
Yeah.
Do you
I
report
don't
them?
either. No,
Yeah, I think there's a question on any grants or funds, and you have to, in the quarterly
Right,
reports
right.
and in the annual
in the
report.
annual too. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
Okay. And that would, I would think, show up. I've seen the annual report where it just shows like all of the revenue. I don't think it specifies grants.
Yeah, but it does
But-
the revenue gets reported is what I'm
Yeah.
hearing. So.
Oh, yeah.
The quarterly report shows a need. Item number 3112 is funding from grants. And
Thank
we have
you.
to report that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jared.
Thanks.
Well, I think this presentation was outstanding, and I
I
look forward to it being posted for everyone, and hopefully this was recorded because I think it's very useful.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we'll put it up there along with the slides. By the way, I tried to get you the slides in a different way in the chat with a Google link. Hopefully that'll work for you. Anyway, but I will also put those as well as that document, this document on conference donor base checklist. And this one, Vincentian philanthropy. Okay.
Yeah, John Barry gave a great talk at the end of the conference on Vincentian philanthropy and how, fundraising should be organized and it should be personal and all of that stuff. He tied it in really well with the Vincentian spirituality. So I got a copy of that after the conference. So Nick is going to share that with you as well. Definitely.
I would like to mention one other thing. We have a once a year envelope in our church envelopes that they do for us, but we also take our members on the third Sunday and we stand at all the doors with baskets identifying St. Vincent de Paul. And we talk to people as they come in and out. And so that gives us a personal interaction with our other members of our parish on supporting St. Vincent de Paul. We've actually recruited a couple of people through that. They come in and talk about it and stuff like that. So I think that's a useful way to go. Now, Father Beadle is not particularly happy with that, from what I understand. He doesn't want us to do that, but so far he hasn't told us that we can't. So we're going to continue doing it.
That's great. Awesome. Well, thank you all so much. This has been very good. I've learned a lot too from you all. So if you have any other questions as you go through, reach out to Nick and he can ask me, and yeah,
I'll reach out to Jackie.
he'll reach out to me. He'll reach out to me. That's great.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Thank you again, Jackie.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.